Welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobbie Grenier, your trusted guide to navigating the world of real estate in Maine. Get ready to debunk mortgage myths, unravel real estate mysteries, and learn tips to avoid costly mistakes. Whether you're an industry pro, an overwhelmed buyer, confused seller, or simply curious about life in Maine, this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast. I'm Bobbie Grenier, your trusted guide to all things Maine real estate. Today, I am thrilled to have Chelsie Crane, Chief Investment Officer of Crosswind Investments, a member of Advisory Services LLC, joining me as we discuss and dig into misconceptions about investing and practical strategies for financial freedom. Remember, the contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only, and it's essential to discuss any financial decisions with a professional who understands your circumstances and goals. Now let's talk about today's guest. Chelsie Crane, a native Mainer, is driven by her passion for inclusivity and empowerment in the financial world. Through Crosswind Investments, her mission is to offer a holistic and human-centered approach to investments, retirement planning, and wealth management, tailored to each client's unique needs. Beyond her professional endeavors, Chelsie is deeply involved in her community. She's an active member of the Tuesday Forum and has contributed to various publications like Maine Women's Magazine, Maine Seniors Magazine, and Sideline Sports Weekly newsletter. Her interests extend to gardening, where she runs Live Simple Bloom Wild, a microflower farm, and aviation, a passion she shares with her husband, Andy. Juggling all these roles, including coaching her daughter's basketball team and attending her son's football practices, Chelsie embodies the balance between career, family, and community engagement. Her commitment to client outreach and education is impressive, and I couldn't think of anyone better to discuss financial fitness, the first step to home ownership, on our podcast today than Chelsie. Hey, Chelsie, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I just did a really impressive bio introduction on you. And in researching your company, one of the things that really impressed me was your mission statement. And I wondered if you could talk to everybody about what your mission statement is.
Absolutely. So it's sort of a twofold approach to how I wanted to go about running and operating this business. And as someone who didn't grow up in a super wealthy family, I grew up in an area that socioeconomically isn't known for an abundance of wealth. It was really important to me to reach out to people who might not otherwise think of investing as something that they can do, or as wealth accumulation as something that they can do. So that was one thing that was really important to me, because wealth doesn't have to be reserved for the elite, and investing doesn't have to be either. And the other side of that was that I wanted to help women, and women are going to come into a large majority of the wealth control over the next few years, whether they realize it's happening or not, it is. And I feel like a lot of women do not want to ask those questions about investing and about finance, not because they're not curious, but more because they're afraid of looking dumb or afraid of being vulnerable. So it's really important to me that I reach out to women and say, hey, there's no reason you should know this or have background knowledge on this. It's okay for you not to know everything, and I'm here to help you.
I love that. That's awesome. And we put the term financial freedom out there, and I'm sure it means something different to everybody. But can you give the listeners just kind of a basic definition of what you would consider financial freedom?
So we've seen a lot of sensationalized movements in the media about financial freedom, especially around the FIRE movement, where people are really restricted for a certain period of time, and then they retire when they're 30, and that's kind of where you pick up with them. But for me, financial freedom is a little bit different in that a lot of things have changed in early life for folks and in retirement. So retirement used to look very much like you get done working, you ride off into the sunset, you go to a beach in Florida and you don't work another day and you play golf and tennis and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are lucky enough to have a relatively healthy generation and people's minds are still very active.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, 60, 70 doesn't look like 60, 70-year olds used to back in the day. I mean, people are really able and have this desire to learn constantly well into their senior years. So retirement now is um, more along those financial freedom lines. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Morgan Housel is an author who writes on finance a lot. He said it really well in one of his books that financial freedom is doing what you want with who you want for how long you want.
Perfect. That's absolutely perfect. All right. So jumping off from that, I also think that a lot of folks, maybe in your grandparents' generation, worked for larger companies, in our area, a lot of mills and that sort of thing. And they had a great retirement for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rarity even now that I'm seeing people that are phasing into retirement that have a pension that is part of their retirement plan. Um, it was really common. There used to be this really strong build between employer and employee going both
Hmm.
ways. You hear a lot of it of employees not being faithful to employers and leaving and going
Hmm.
somewhere else, but it's kind of a two-way street. They started doing that because all of these, or a lot of the reason that started happening, is because a lot of these perks that people used to get for being long-term employees is not really in existence anymore. And a lot of that responsibility has now been put back onto the employee.
Hmm.
Uh, so now we see more things like 401ks or 403bs if you're with a nonprofit or a hospital, something like that. You also might have something called a simple IRA. And if
Hmm.
your employer doesn't offer any of those things, you're probably looking at more of a traditional IRA Roth type situation.
Right, right. Well, and you couple that with, and I'm certainly not talking against the younger generation because as you know, I have children in that generation and I try to talk to them about starting some investing and I think they're starting to listen. But that younger generation that is a little more of an instant gratification generation. So are you finding that works against what they really should be looking at long term?
Yes and no. I sometimes I see that like that instant gratification, and it's hard for them to visualize one day, yes, I would like to retire. But I also see this really financially aware pocket of people in that generation too.
Mm.
Like I just not too long ago, I met with a pharmacy student, and he was like, "Listen, I'm not graduate. I haven't even graduated yet, but I know when I get out, I'm going to be making decent money as a pharmacist, and I want to start from the beginning, knowing that I'm doing it right.
Mhm.
What should we do?" And to me, that was really impressive because you don't see a ton of 20 something year old kids like I'm going to start it right from the beginning and I'm going to do it right.
That's amazing, and good for him. Good for him on that. So that's actually awesome and really impressive to hear that somebody that hasn't even gotten out of college is thinking that way. So jumping off of that, we have kids in that generation and they have student loans and they're maybe not, they're getting out of school. They're not at their top of income by any means. And the cost of living is higher. And all of those factors go in to somebody trying to buy a home and save money towards a down payment so that they're um, not having a crazy mortgage. And we don't want to talk about interest rates right now. That's a whole other topic. But if the ultimate goal, or certainly a short-term or maybe long-term goal is homeownership. What would you say to that?
So, in my world, we have a lot of disclaimers, and one of those is that everything I say when I'm speaking to a general public like this is for general educational purposes. Uh,
Absolutely.
Individual advice should come directly from your
Hmm.
advisor, whatever it may be. Um, and that segues nicely into this because a lot of folks have this feeling that wealth and finance and building a portfolio, whether it be real estate or otherwise, should be by the books. Like if you just follow these directions, if you
Hmm.
Google it and follow it, that is the path. Well, that's a really generalized thing to go off of, and um, it's very broad, and it doesn't really speak to individual situations.
Right. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing, but
Right.
real estate certainly can be a part of somebody's portfolio.
Absolutely. And I think what the rules or quote rules or expectations in the past used to be that owning a home as your primary dwelling would be one of the largest pieces in your net worth or one of your largest assets. Um, and that may have been true in the past, but looking forward, if that's something you want to do, I think it's going to be something that you're going to have to be a little bit more conscious
Hmm.
about when you're making that decision. Um, because you can't look at it as a short term, immediate gratification reward, like you were talking
Right.
about.
Right.
Uh, a lot of these folks, when they were purchasing homes, were buying and holding. They
Hmm.
were staying in these homes for a very long time because they were staying with the same companies for a very long time. And they were happy with the community that they were in and all of that. And so it gave the property time to accumulate value and then also for you to pay that down.
Hmm.
And a lot of people also forget about some of the um, side costs that come with home ownership,
Absolutely.
not just the property itself. It's the yard upkeep, it's taxes, it's insurance,
Insurance.
it's
Yeah. The
it's
plumber or the sink leaking,
exactly
all
all
of that.
those things that come with it. If you were to actually sit down and write all of those costs
Hmm.
out, would you in fact have that much of a rate of return?
Right.
Um, it sounds crazy, but actually I have it right here. So we bought this house that we're currently in, and we plan
Hmm.
on being here for quite a while now.
Right.
And everything that we have done in this house, I have in this binder, and I have the receipt and what it was and what we did to it.
Wow.
So that one, it sounds kind of like a crazy person, but one, if we go to sell, we can say, hey, look at everything we did to this house.
That is not a crazy person. That is a listing real estate agent's dream right there.
but but it also lets me keep track of how much we're actually spending in this house. And yes, we're spending a certain amount and we get to live here for that time, but there's also how much do we actually want to put into this house if one day we plan on selling it? um,
Right.
because it's really easy to say, well, I sold my house for 300,000.
Hmm.
Well, and I only bought it for 250. Well, that's
Right.
great, but you put $60,000 worth of work in it. So is it
Right.
that
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Well, the other thing that's nice too, and I'm sure you're aware of all of this, there are a lot of programs that get not even necessarily younger people, because some people are buying their first home into their 30s, 40s,
Mhm.
but get them into new homes with lower interest rates. And that frees up money for them to invest and plan for their future. So you
Absolutely.
must have to stay, I mean, obviously you would refer them to a lender or somebody that has knowledge in that area. But certainly, if somebody came to you and home ownership was part of what their plan was, you could refer them to, Main State Housing or, those types of first time home buyer programs. Again, a lower interest rate, less expense for the home, and they are gaining equity in the home and frees up money for them to be able to invest and plan for their future a little bit more than that. I We've probably all for years listened to advisors like Susie Orman, and she talks about don't buy Starbucks and don't eat out, and all of those little things that you can do that is going to make you retire early or have all kinds of money or whatever. What is your take on that? Does it matter?
So my take is you got to look at finance very similar to a diet, essentially, right? So,
Hmm.
like, if you put yourself on a really, really restrictive diet and you say, I'm going to go to the gym every single day for 2 hours, and I'm going to do that for the next 30 years so that I can live my next 20 years fit and healthy and whatever, when you go that hard at the beginning, you are probably going to get burnt out and end up further backwards. So I like to say, yes, maybe start thinking more consciously about it. So,
Exactly.
instead of, you know, buying Starbucks or whatever it may be, yeah, if you buy Starbucks 5 days a week, maybe only go twice a week.
Right,
You don't have
right,
to cut things out completely, especially if they are important to you. Um, and I think that's where a lot of people have a hard time because things that are important to me might not necessarily be important to you. And we're all looking at each other through the same, like our own lenses. So it's
right.
really hard to kind of say, well, Chelsie and her family just went on a trip. Well, yes, we did. But what you didn't see is we still haven't replaced our front door that
Right,
we need to.
right. Well, and I do think that I have cut out, buying a coffee out. I make my coffee in the morning, and I hate to spend the $10 for lunch. I pack my lunch, and my husband packs his lunches, but I like to have my fingernails done. So
Right,
it really, that's the same thing, you see that, but there are oftentimes, hopefully, some adjustments made on the other side so that you can, feel a little more responsible, but enjoy those luxuries that you might like to have.
right,
And it's also, I mean, do you find that people need to, again, talking about that instant gratification, getting away from that, um, do I want this or do I need this?
right,
And if you stop and think about it and you say, well, I want it. And
right.
then you put it in that category and then you decide, is there something else I need to give up? Or, is this just something that I can, not everybody has to make these tough decisions, but we live in Maine and it is a lot of times um economically depressed. And, we have to make those decisions so that we can have the life that we want to live. And I
Yes.
also think too, in this day of Amazon add to cart,
Yeah.
I've started employing I add it to cart, but I don't buy it. And then I
Right.
go back and I'll, move it to save for later. And 9 times out of 10, I don't need it. And it was something I looked at at 2 in the morning. I don't need it.
Right. Right. Well, and that's circling back around to home ownership and what exactly you're looking for in a home if this is going to be your primary residence. I think what you're saying is very much what I mean. I feel it sometimes too. You go on social media or you watch HGTV or whatever, and you see these like beautiful, aesthetically pleasing homes, and they're huge and they're in this beautiful neighborhood. And you think, I need that.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily a need. What you do need is a safe, warm environment
Well,
for your family in the
and
location that works for you. Um,
absolutely.
and I think that's where a lot of young people get in over their head from the beginning with money is they're trying to get into these big, beautiful homes. And unfortunately, they're not coming at the price tag that is fit for them. And even if they I know qualifications for loans and stuff is much more strict than it ever has been in the past. But it's still, you have this desire to have the thing that you have seen. And it's even for me, it's really hard for me not to be like, oh, let's just dump all our money in renovating our home when it's not pretty, but it's working just the way it is.
Well, first off, your house is pretty, and it's not even just young people. I mean, I'm in my mid 50s and I have this large house that I raised my family in. I've been here for almost 30 years, if you can believe that. And I always envisioned that, I would sell it. I would do something else. And of course, the market conditions don't really support doing that. But now I'm looking at, hopefully retiring at some point in my semi near future. I don't want the big mortgage. I
Right.
would rather have more taken and put into my IRA than to worry about that big mortgage. But I did have to get over the vision of what I thought I, wanted, a condo on the beach or, all of that. And once you make peace with it, though, it's actually kind of freeing to not have it constantly rolling around in your mind as I should do this, or, this is what everybody else is doing. So
Right.
I think that, yeah, we need to get off the HGTV or all of these really scripted and staged situations on social media that make us think that that's the lifestyle we need to have to be fulfilled, because I don't buy into that.
Right. And it is, it's especially when it comes to spending your money, sometimes it takes a little while for you to realize what exactly is it when I spend my money on this that really brings me and my family happiness and
Hmm.
contentment. Um, because it isn't necessarily the thing that we're being told outwardly
Exactly.
that it should be. Um,
Right.
and it is really freeing to, like you said, to have that moment of, oh, well, I guess I didn't really want that. And it feels great to know that, to let that idea go.
Right.
Um, it does kind of still sneak up on you every once in a while.
And
But
and that's okay, because sometimes you need to reevaluate and choose again, and then you feel good for a little bit longer. But I just think that making those tough choices and being able to make it work as far as planning for your future, having some financial freedom, and also being able to purchase a home or even invest in property. We see a lot of people building wealth through investment properties. But again, it's uh, interest rates are high. So, is this a great time to borrow money for investing? It's
yeah, it's, so you always have like this argument of, will my returns on investment A be better than an investment B? And that's kind of the opportunity risk that you
mhm,
see in investment. Um, and as far as real estate investment goes, I'm definitely not a I wouldn't say a expert
mhm,
as far as property investment ownership
right.
goes. But what I can say is, the thing that tangles a lot of people up is when they go into a property with the wrong purpose.
Mhm,
So if you're looking at building a real estate portfolio, then you need to go into it with that mindset. So maybe this isn't your first home purchase, because your first home purchase where you're going to live will be your home. And that's what
mhm,
you kind of need to look at it as. Whereas if you're doing this because you're going to live in it and then flip it, then you need to look at it that way. I think having a clear cut view of what your purpose is in investment is really important, because then, the difference of 1 or 2% here or there won't really make that much of a difference if you're not headed in the right direction. If you're
right.
still going sideways, that couple of percent really isn't going to make a huge difference. And as far as interest rates go, I mean, there's a lot of conversation around that, but
Absolutely.
The fact of the matter is we were so spoiled with those low interest rates. Like
Oh,
we
I
were
know.
just really, really spoiled. And I think folks forget real quick how high interest rates were at one point.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
and so while that was like a really sweet spot, and I'm glad we bought our home when we did, um, the pure factor, just that one factor of looking at the interest rate shouldn't be the deciding factor for you.
Hmm.
You really need to look at it from all angles and look at more than one factor of just interest rates alone.
Well, buying a home, you can't completely look at it from well, I mean, you have to the practical part of the financial, but you're also it's your home. Does this house meet your needs? Is it in the community that you want to be, the schools you want your kids to go to? So it is, you can't just put it into one box and think, everybody this is going to fit for everybody.
So the other piece of interest rates that I see a lot when it comes to home ownership is folks will come to me and say, should I put this money towards paying off my mortgage early? Or so and so said I should put it in a brokerage account and let it grow because it's going to grow more. It quote should, this is what
Right.
they're saying to me. It might grow more in this investment account in the same time frame, and then I can take it out of the investment account and pay my house off in a lump sum because
Hmm.
that money will be making more over here. Uh,
Right.
and that's one of those things that, in theory, yeah, that like generally, that would be a wonderful plan. But the next step is, are you really going to do it?
Yes.
Because that the follow through is a huge piece. If you don't pay extra towards your mortgage, are you really going to be moving it to this brokerage account? And are you going to be doing it consistently? And then when it does get built up to a certain amount that you could pay your house off, will you actually use the money for that? Or will life happen and you decide to use that money for something else? And then you're right back to where you were before, essentially, when it comes to the home ownership piece.
Well, it seems certainly like we were talking about when the interest rates were lower, and the last last thing I considered doing was paying off my mortgage because there were other things that increasing my deduction for my IRA, was one of the things, and paying off anything that was maybe a little bit higher interest rate. So it sounds the thought of being mortgage free sounds beautiful, but if you have that low interest rate, then, this is just my advice. I'm not a financial planner, but that seems like a little bit of common sense advice. So, but I just wanted to circle back to what we talked about in the beginning, which was the mission of Crosswind Investments and how you approach things. And we talked about like the intimidation. We talked primarily about women, but I think that can be, anybody. And for someone who's struggling, everything's so expensive. You have 3 children.
Yeah,
Groceries are expensive. Gas is expensive, but you still should try, in my opinion, still try to think about your future.
absolutely.
Okay. So those who may be struggling, with life, with their regular bills, how can they start? Just like what is that first step that they can start even small, just to kind of get into the arena and get going?
That's probably one of the biggest takeaways is just start, no matter how small it is, just get going. Get yourself in the habit of setting things aside for your future, or getting in the habit of reviewing your budget on a monthly basis, or get in the habit of um, paying extra towards a credit card, or whatever your highest interest debt may be, or one that is you would just really love to get rid of.
Right.
um, but the biggest thing is to start, because even if it's $5 a month, that's better than nothing. And in the investing world, time is really going to be one of your best friends. So the sooner you can start that, the better. And it's really easy to start small, and say, oh, $5 a month wasn't too bad. Maybe next month I'll go to 10. And that's a whole lot easier than jumping headfirst in like $500 a month and being like, whoa,
Right.
I need to put gas in my car this week.
Right.
And that goes a long way instead of pulling those funds back out, because sometimes you're going to see penalties a lot of times for withdrawing early from retirement accounts,
Right.
or selling at a time when it's less convenient.
Right.
So just start small, see how it goes, get in that habit of being more mindful about your money and saving for your future. Because you just got to start at some point, or else you're never going, you got to rip that band-aid off.
That's right. So here we are, the end of April. People are hopefully getting some money back for taxes. So, if somebody got $1,500 back for taxes and they called you up and said, Chelsea, this is all I have. What can you do for me? Or not necessarily specifically what can you do, but is that something that you could sit down and get them started on something?
Yeah, it would definitely, we would sit down and we would look at their financial picture as a
Right.
whole.
Right.
And I'm always happy to do that with
Hmm.
anyone. Like I said, this is kind of a mission and it's really important to me. And even if we never work together again in the future, it's important to me that people come talk to me and ask me the question. So even if they feel more comfortable going somewhere else,
Right.
I want to help them build that base knowledge. So if someone came to me and was like, yeah, I've got this tax return, which actually did happen.
Oh,
Happened. Um, and in this particular person's situation, she has young children and she's a single mom. And she was like, I always get money back, but I got more money back than I am used to getting. And so we kind of made a plan of, okay, do you have emergency savings? Because if this is going to be your emergency savings, that's kind of where we stop talking for the time being.
hmm.
Um, and well, not stop talking, we can still talk, but
Right. Right.
that's step one.
Hmm.
Um, and yet, if it happened to be that, yes, I have an emergency savings, all good, excellent.
Hmm.
Um, do you have like 2 or 3 months worth of expenses saved? Because in my mind, I like to have emergency savings, like
Hmm.
all heck just broke loose, like that pocket of money,
Hmm.
and then the pocket of money that's more like long term, like if
Hmm.
somebody were to lose their job or something.
Right.
Do you have that saved up? Yes, yes, perfect. Do you have any expenses that or something that you're saving up for within the next 3 years? If they are looking at something for the next 3 years, sometimes we'll review things like certificates of deposits at
Hmm.
banks. So that is one of the great things about the interest rates being higher right now is you see banks. I'm thinking of a couple local ones right off the top of my head, actually, that have had wonderful CD rates for 6 months, a year, 2 years.
Hmm.
Um, and those are great vehicles for if you know you're going to need this money in the relative short term because they're easy to liquidate, but you're also getting paid a little bit on that money. It might
Okay.
not be an astronomical amount, but your money's actually working for you a little bit within those CDs. If that next step happens and they say, I have nothing coming up in the next 3 years, I'm good on my emergency savings, I'm good on my regular savings. Now what? That's when we look at, all right, how about your retirement accounts? Have
Right.
you put as much in that is to a tax advantage for you? Have you maxed them out? Looking at those options. And if they've checked all of those, then we start looking at a little bit more specific investment options for
That
them, whether it be a brokerage or, maybe they're looking to diversify somewhere else.
that makes perfect sense. And I think that that's so great that you just went down through that because a lot of people think, I need to get investing, but that's just a very practical approach to that. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure people that you talk with appreciate that because, you don't want to be, yeah, just give me all your money and I'm going to invest it. Well, you're clearly looking at the person and caring about, what their picture is. And again, like we've said 100 times, there's no one size fits all with this.
Right.
And, I find myself coming up with questions and then I think about it. It's like the answer for me in my mid 50s is going to be completely different for you or, for my kids in their early 20s. So, but having said that, and I guess we'll kind of gear it towards somebody in their 20s or 30s that maybe is really starting to think that they want to start thinking more about their future. Could you give just three practical steps? And you can Susie Orman it if you want to, but just three practical steps that it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be investing tomorrow, but a little bit of a roadmap to get to that point.
Yeah. This is tough though. Um, I think give yourself time and start small and ask questions.
Don't be overwhelmed. That's the big one for me. And I'm sure there are people like, I'm a client of yours, and I'm sure there are people that are like me that are like, here's the money, make it look, make me more money. And that's it. And then there are others that, really want the details and you're always after me to sit down and do a review with you. And I do the overall review and I'm like, looks good because I just don't know. It's not my thing. And it's nice that I trust you and I rely on you. And I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, it's funny because I see like a whole spectrum of people. I have people that if we talked every single day about their portfolio, they would be happy. And then I have people that if if I didn't reach out to them for like 3 years, they wouldn't care. They're like, just do your thing. And then I have all the people in between.
Right, right.
But it's really important. Like this is your money. So regardless on if you are interested in it, it's really important for you to understand even if it's just at like a really basic level of what exactly is happening with it. Because that just will allow you to make better choices moving forward, or choices that are the most efficient for you, really.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's funny, I've had people come in and um, they initially came in and they like passed their papers over and they're like, I don't know, this is what I had, just take it and do something with it. I don't understand this, I don't know, just it's make me money or whatever it was that you said. And then we got talking and we kind of went over the basics, and then we had another meeting, and the next meeting, she started to ask a couple questions. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, okay, this is great. And so then by, a year in, now she'll send me messages or emails and be like, hey, is this a public company? Is
That's awesome. That's awesome. You did a program, and I know that my daughter participated in it for people, Gabrielle, who's she was 28, I think, at the time. You did sort of a Zoom program.
Yeah, it was kind of like a basics of investing, because
Hmm.
I think when people think about investing, you think of Wall Street and like scary yelling guys and
Right. Waving papers and yeah.
right charts and numbers going everywhere and
Hmm.
like just short letters and green and red. Um, and it's really overwhelming. And I think the industry overall has done a good job gatekeeping this information from people of what this really is, because when you look at it as what it is quite simple when you know what to look for. And it's really intimidating to start learning about it because you don't even really know where to start.
So the base, I know, wouldn't it be great if we did a little more financial planning and financial awareness for high school students?
Yeah.
Wouldn't
Yes.
that be nice?
It's funny because I see that all the time. It's like, I wish we learned this in school. And it would be nice, but I feel like a lot of teachers, just a lot of folks in general, like the general population, has never had a lot of exposure to this stuff. And so it's really difficult to find someone that feels comfortable talking about it when they themselves have never really been around it or
Yeah,
introduced.
right, right. That's a good point. That's absolutely a good point.
And some things you should learn in school and some things parents should teach, but money has been, kind of like this taboo thing. You don't talk about money,
Right, right,
even parents and children. And even with my own kids, it's kind of hard to walk that fine line. Like, I don't ever want them to feel worried about money, but I also don't want them to not think that it's not a thing, because
right,
it very much is a thing that runs through everybody's lives.
right. Absolutely. And we have food at home. That's what every mom says. We have food at home. Um, yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think teaching them appropriately at a young age is a good thing. I always tried with my kids, if they got birthday money, to spend half and save half, and didn't always work out that way, but that was certainly the goal, to try to at least, and then they could see the reward of when they really wanted something, they had some money put away. Well, I do have to commend you and Andy, that with your kids, you make them you make them earn some of their money. I've seen your kids doing it, and they're not teenagers, they're, younger, and still you try to teach them the value. So that's a really great thing to see, and I think that more parents should do that. Well, speaking of which, I don't want to keep you any longer on this rainy Sunday, but I'm really happy that you sat down with me, because I've actually learned some stuff and have some stuff to think about. So I appreciate it, and I will definitely share all of your information for anyone that wants to reach out and talk to you a little more, or have some questions, or just want some more education, because I know that that's really important to you.
Yes, definitely. And no question is dumb. No question is silly. It's really, really important to me that people understand what's happening with their money. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat.
Well, I'm so appreciative to have someone like you out there to guide all of us investment dummies out there. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea, and I will talk with you soon.
Thank you.
I want to thank Chelsea for coming on the podcast today and sharing such great information. If you want to connect with Chelsea, you can reach her on the socials at Crosswind Investments, or email her at Chelsie, Chelsie, at crosswindwealth.com. You can also reach her at 207-944-0094. This has been the Maine Real Estate Roundtable podcast with Bobbie Grenier. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and will share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to leave a review and follow the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes and not intended as legal advice or representation by myself or any of the guests on the podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it real.